Should you go to synagogue on Purim? Is a question that I have seen addressed in Jewish newspapers this week. I am delighted that in synagogue this morning we have a range of participants from 6 months old to over 80, and all in between, having chosen this morning to be here despite risks. And yes, there are risks. In responding to this question, I've seen links to the Torah reading, Parshat Tetzaveh, which begins regarding the bringing of the oil, V'yikhu elecha shemen zayit zach katit l'ma'or, and you shall bring a clear oil of beaten olives for lighting. And so one impassioned writer says, we need the light that comes with being in community. And just like in the crafting of the Mishkan and the crafting later of the temple, it is said that the light of the windows would come from a narrow to a large aperture, so that from the tabernacle light would emerge. So for us too, when we gather together, we come to experience each other's presence and the light of God, and that's essential. And then regarding the link to Purim more directly, another Devar Torah concluded with the words from the Megillat Esther, V'hana'afochu, and it was overturned. Despite all the fears, it was reversed. V'nahafochu, it's going to be fine. I too anticipate it will be fine. So it has been fine with SARS and Ebola. Things do pass in the bubonic plague. Do you know in 1439, King Henry VI said to his subjects in England, you shall not kiss each other any more in greeting on each other's cheeks. You should shake each other's hands. Some say that that's still the reason that the British are a bit stiff in their shaking of hands and not kissing, going back to the bubonic plague, 1439 in the edict. I remember once being in a synagogue with Linda in Buenos Aires, and there on Friday night, to the credit of that Rabbi Alejandra, the gathering on a Friday night looked like a high holiday service. And when people came into synagogue, they kissed each other. And in fact, when people came over to meet us as guests in the community, they came over to kiss us. And I'm not used to that. I could be the rabbi, so they would think twice. But Linda got lots of kisses that night. Because in the Argentinian community, you don't shake hands, you kiss on both cheeks, whoever you meet, whether you've met them before or not, if you're friendly. And so there are different customs of how people greet each other and meet each other. And this, let it be known, is the first Shabbat of the elbow bump at CBI. And I was serious when I said in my little prayer when the Torah goes around, no, if we do not reach out to kiss you, it is not because we don't love you, but because we're taking certain precautions. And precautions will be taken today. On this, the Shabbat of the elbow bump. Our bagels in the back will be wrapped today in cellophane, individually. We have noticed that some people generously leave half a bagel for somebody else, which means they rip the bagel and touch it. And so this morning, all bagels will be wrapped in cellophane, and the salads will be in separate bowls. This, for me, on this Shabbat, is wise. It's wise on the part of our leadership to say we have to practice, that's how I interpret it, for what will happen. As a matter of probability, coronavirus, COVID-19 will spread. That's reality. And in anticipation of that, habits have to be changed, like the habit of shaking hands to express warmth of greeting, the habit and the ease of simply having bagels out on a big table to take with our hands. Again, these are measures on this, the first Shabbat of the elbow bump, not because I am afraid of shaking anybody's hands in this room. I am not this Shabbat, because the coronavirus has not yet, at least in terms of having been diagnosed, reached our immediate area. Once again. So there you go. It's come. We have 3 already in Orange County that I was unaware of, and I'm sure if there are 3 that are identified, there are many more. I am fascinated by how we respond to risk. I have always admired the people in Israel and how they've responded to terrorism. I don't know how many of you know this book or have read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman was my professor at Hebrew University in statistics, would go on to win the Nobel Prize for Economics. His great insight in terms of the economics, the psychology of economics, is that there's 2 ways of thinking. Thinking fast is doing what feels reflex-like, often grounded in bias, often grounded in habit, often grounded in fear. We naturally shortcut our decision-making. Thinking slow is to actually look, and mind you, I studied with them in statistics. Thinking slow is to look at probabilities. And so he writes as follows regarding terrorism. Just the punchline. My experience illustrates how terrorism works and why it is so effective. It induces an availability cascade, an extremely vivid image of death and damage, constantly reinforced by media attention and frequent conversations, becomes highly accessible, especially if it is associated with a specific situation, such as the sight of a bus. The emotional arousal is associative, automatic, and uncontrolled, and it produces an impulse for protective action. System 2, slow thinking, rational thinking, may know that the probability is low, but this knowledge does not eliminate the self-generated discomfort and the wish to avoid it. System 1, fast thinking, reflex, cannot be turned off. The emotion is not only disproportionate to the probability, it is also insensitive to the exact level of probability. Suppose that 2 cities have been warned about the presence of suicide bombers. Residents of one city are told that 2 bombers are ready to strike in different places. Residents of another city are told of a single bomber. Their risk is lower by half, but do they feel much safer? His is a caution about thinking in terms of possibilities, fast thinking, rather than probabilities. It was true in our synagogue. After the shooting in Poway, there were people who were initially afraid to come to synagogue. It could happen here too. Could it? Absolutely. It can happen anywhere. But after such a trauma, with the trauma in front of us on the news, it is only natural to recoil, to be uncomfortable, to be fearful. There is every reason to be cautious right now because there is uncertainty. There are 3 cases, as I've just learned, in Orange County, and I have no doubt it will continue to spread. And if it's 3 now, it is not contained, despite wishful thinking. Beware of those, and that need we all have, for to be nahafochba, that all will change. Here I rely on science. So to promote Danny Matt, he's in our Siddur. I told you he's a big deal. Danny Matt will be our guest a week from Sunday, teaching about Zohar. But his pet interest is science, cosmology in particular. And he writes as follows about the wonders of creation. Why is the sky blue? Among the wavelengths of light in the sun's spectrum, blue oscillates at the highest frequency and is therefore scattered effectively by molecules of air in our atmosphere. This turns the sky blue, the scattered molecules of air. To me, this seems more amazing than ancient Mesopotamian and biblical beliefs that the sky is blue because of all the water up there. What science shows us about the evolution of our universe and ourselves is as awesome to me as Genesis or the Kabbalah, Daniel Matt. But I would add that even more than science tells me about why the sky is blue is more relevant than the wishful thought or the familiarity of blue equals water, is that science analysis, looking at facts, there are facts, and valuing the fact that not all facts are necessarily 100%, but that there's enough evidence of the things that matter in life to make realistic determinations. There are no facts right now as to how widespread coronavirus is. No hard facts. But there's a lot of evidence, and the ones I turn to for that evidence are the scientists who have the skills to study and determine what the real risks are. Not those who would have self-serving interests in describing hunches and what could be. What I'm concerned about is keeping our communities safe with the help of science and with the help of preparedness. One more comment, another comment in our Siddur, and that is on the need for preparedness. It says that you need, it's one of the comments on the left-hand margin in regard to prayer, that you need to hoe in order to prepare a field for the crops to grow. Because if not, that same rain that enables the growth of the plants will simply be a slosh of mud. Rain is good when we are prepared. This is a time in which we, as individuals, will have to choose for ourselves what risks to take and what risks not to. But it should be done with our eyes open to probabilities, not only possibilities. Because if I walk out that door, anything could happen. Anything could happen by taking one more step off this bima. Possibilities is not what controls how I live my life, or I would be paralyzed. At the same time, one can't be engaged in wishful thinking to say it's not there, because you don't want it to be there, because it will help the economy if it wasn't there. One must be realistic with the world, and we must trust that the information we are receiving is information that will allow us to make the right choices for us individually. And it will differ. For people who are older, there is reason to be more cautious. I said to our son in the emergency room, I said, John, you're going to be exposed to a lot of coronavirus being in New York City. I hope it goes well for you. He says, Dad, it hasn't impacted people under 40 that hard. It would give me 2 weeks off. Now, that's not necessarily the best response, but it is the awareness that frankly, no children have been hurt by coronavirus, and I celebrate the parents who've brought your children here today. And I celebrate each of us who are here today, knowing that it's about balancing and looking for the scientific information that will allow us to make the choices that will keep us healthy and engaged in living. Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, may we have faith that this danger will pass. Though scientists consistently say this danger will get worse, may we prepare and may we make the right choices. Amen. Our service continues with Mimi leading us in Musaf. We rise. Page
184.